Okay, hello everybody. It's Mari-Lyn Harris of Hard at Work, and I got Randall with me today, and we're going to talk about on my podcast about creating an impactful legacy. And Randall is just one of those guys that's really out doing it right now. So thank you for joining us. And I'm just doing an experiment. I've never done Facebook Live, so he said he's willing to do it with me. So great. So welcome, Randall. Randy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Mari-Lyn. Thank you so much for having me on with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So Randy does kindness too. He's known as the kindness giver. So Randy, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how'd you get started doing what you're doing?
Well, it's a long story. But all my life I've been blessed to have good people who have reached out and touched my heart in multiple ways. I grew up in a home where there were some interesting challenges, and as a teenager, particularly, we were going through some really, really tough things as a family.
Mm-hmm.
My father made some serious mistakes and ended up being arrested and having to go through a trial and all that stuff. And as you might imagine, for a teenager, that was pretty embarrassing because it was a small town, and
Right.
everybody knew, who my dad was. Everybody knew what was going on, and I was tremendously embarrassed and didn't have a lot of self-esteem at that time. But I was also tremendously blessed because I had friends who loved me, who supported me, who stuck by me, who stood by me during that time, and they helped me to be able to get through it. And I've been blessed to have those kind of experiences throughout my life, and because of that, I've always wanted to give back. I love people. I
Mm-hmm.
really do. I care about people. When I hear that somebody's in pain or anguish or hurt, the first thing I want to do is reach out and put my arms around them and hug them and say, hey, we're going to
Right.
make it through this together. And so I have been doing cybersecurity and information security for a long time, and it's a very needed thing, but I didn't feel like I was making as big an impact on people's lives individually and personally doing that. In fact, in that industry, in the information security world, it's very valuable, but you're kind of the guy that everybody loves to hate because nobody wants to talk about the information security because they directly associate it with, okay, how much money are you going to be asking me for, and what kind of pain do I have to go through to meet these requirements, etc.
Right.
So after being in the information security world for nearly 20 years between engineering and network security and information security, I decided to I was really triggered to move in a different direction. And when they started having all the mass shootings last summer and so many people
Mm-hmm.
were killed, I couldn't just sit back anymore. I couldn't just sit on the sidelines.
Right.
And I'm in that mode again right now. I mean, I've been in that mode, but that's been reinforced with everything that's been happening in the last week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to apologize for getting a little bit emotional, but
Yeah.
when I see a man have his life snuffed out because someone else is kneeling on his neck,
Mm-hmm.
I can't just sit back and say, okay, well, that's an issue in another city, in another place. That's an issue for somebody else to deal with. You know, all these things that are happening, I have
Mm-hmm.
to ask myself how many of them would be happening if these people, if people had embraced kindness, if people would recognize that
Mm-hmm.
all lives matter. And in this case, and I say that not distracting from, I want to be careful how I say that because
Right.
Black lives matter.
Right.
Black lives matter. And when, it's funny, I used to get angry when I heard Black lives matter, not because I don't feel like their lives matter, but I felt like they were saying, well, no other lives matter. It's only their lives that matter. And that's not what
Yeah.
they're saying.
Yeah.
Old dogs like me can learn new tricks and learn how not to be ridiculous. They're not saying that. What
Mm-hmm.
they're wanting is for people to recognize, hey, for crying out loud,
Mm-hmm.
it is time to get off our necks It
Mm-hmm.
is time to embrace this. It's time to say all, our lives, our Black lives
Right.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no place, and I don't mean to go in a different direction, Mari-Lyn, but right now I
Yeah.
feel like there is no place in this country. There is no place for racism.
Mm-hmm.
None.
Right.
We're all members of the human race.
Right.
We're all members of the human race. And I can't begin, I'm not going to stand here as a white guy, a 50-year-old white guy who's lived in sheltered, a sheltered life pretty much. I lived in rural America. I can walk outside and people don't look at my skin color and say, oh, there's a white guy. Nobody says that. But
Yeah, that's true.
when my Black brothers and sisters walk out there, people give them weird looks. People treat them differently. People treat them in ways like they're less than human. They do all these things. And I haven't had to deal with that. I can't begin to understand or comprehend, and I never will be able to
Mm-hmm.
understand what they've gone through. Same thing with you, Mari-Lyn, or any
Right.
other woman. I will never be able to understand what it's like to have a baby. I
Either.
have 5 kids. I have
Yeah.
5 kids, and I was there for all their births. I saw the pain and the anguish that my wife went through. I saw it,
Mm-hmm.
and my heart ached for her. I wishing that I could help her, but
Right.
I will never know what it's like to have an 8-pound baby coming through through a little tiny space like that.
Right.
And it's the same thing for that. I will, a good friend of mine, a wonderful man named Ron Higgs, wonderful, Black friend of mine, talked about that today. He says, I appreciate that people want to empathize and understand us and
Mm-hmm.
understand what we've gone through, but you'll never be able to.
Right.
I took that off on a long tangent, but I'm kind because I care. I've gotten into this kindness realm because I just can't sit back on the side anymore. I'm seeing light, love, unity, and peace being eroded at an exponential rate.
Right.
And what can we do to restore that? Some people say, well, it's too late. You see it in our politics. You see it in the divide that's going on in our country. Is it possible to restore those things?
Mm-hmm.
I'm an optimist, like you are,
Mm-hmm.
Mari-Lyn. I believe
Mm-hmm.
kindness can go a long way to restoring those things and to building bridges to hearts, building connections to hearts that can't be built in any other way.
Right. Right. No, I totally get it. I'm right beside you, standing in solidarity of all people, and the Blacks especially, because their voice has not been heard. And if they've had any words to say, everybody just turns the deaf ear off. Like to say, you don't count. But I would say that I have a lot of Black friends, and I would say I'm closer to them than most of the white friends I have. So
Well,
anyway, but that doesn't solve the major issue that we are facing with right now. But I do believe that kindness can definitely help cure whatever is going on. But we all have to embrace it too,
yeah,
right?
well, and the thing that I've loved is I've loved seeing these videos where, like, for example, a sheriff, I believe, I honestly don't remember where it was. It may have been in Florida. I can't remember where it was. Sheriff is there with a bunch of policemen. He's there, with a group of protesters, and he starts taking off his riot gear. He takes off his stuff and he says, "Hey, we're here for you. We're here
Yeah.
with you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? What do you want from us? How can we help you?"
Right.
And of course, they all say, walk with us, stand
Yeah.
with us,
Mm-hmm.
be with us, stand with us now, and show solidarity. And he did, and all the protesters, right then the barriers dropped.
Right.
Why? Because they knew he cared.
Mm-hmm.
They felt like he was hearing them.
Right.
And he went out and he walked with me. You see him all high-fiving him and get, patting him on the back and those kind of things. That's what we need. That's leadership. That's where
Right.
we need to go and head
Right.
today.
Yeah.
That's how we can make a difference for good. And we can hear their cries because they've been crying for a long time.
Yeah. Centuries.
This whole picture, that image is symbolic of, in one way or another, they've had somebody kneeling on their neck,
Mhm.
and they've been gasping for breath
Mhm.
for 400 years
Mhm.
in this country. And it's time now. It's time. The time has come. We cannot
It's past due.
let this go by without taking solid action to stand up and make change, make positive change.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, I'll get off that soapbox now.
Well, it's very important, but I'm not saying anything wrong with it. It's great. You had to say it. So by all means, just say it.
Well,
So,
I
yeah.
appreciate that, Mari-Lyn. I appreciate you. Let me say that. There's a very simple formula that people can use, but I've done a lot of talking. What
Mhm.
other questions do you have for me? I've got a simple formula I can share for the kindness, but I'll let you ask me what you want to.
Yeah, no, it's really, my podcast is just really about um, not just kindness, but it's also about uh, uplifting other people so that they
Yeah,
can become leaders in themselves, better leaders themselves, and maybe even organizations that need a helping hand, but they don't know who to reach out to. So they can reach out to you or anybody else that I've featured on the podcast. And so, the questions are just really simple, but, they're more or less about, finding out a little bit more about what you do and what you offer, and some of the successes and stories that you could share about what you provide and how you provide it. So, for example, it's like, I know you don't have per se any clients because you're not offering consulting services anymore. But so, what do you think some of the biggest challenges that are happening right now besides the Black Lives Matter? Not that it's not important, but back to the podcast.
well, no, it's interesting. I am in the process of working towards consulting in the kindness arena
Right.
and working with organizations, facilitating um, workshops and things where I work with individuals, with executive leadership, with HR people to conduct what I call kindness culture assessments, corporate kindness culture assessments, because I've got an institute that I'm working on. I've developed. It's called the Peacock Institute, and
Mm-hmm.
Peacock. Everybody's like, Peacock. What on earth is that? That stands for the positive economic power of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And I, wow, I say I a lot here. Whoa. No, I, there's something happening right now. Right now in this COVID world, people are got to be thinking about, okay, how am I going to come out of this? How is my organization going to come out of this? And
Mm-hmm.
there's a few key things that I've discussed with other leaders. Right now, with everything that's been happening, a lot of people are working from home,
Mm-hmm.
and in some areas, they've done polls and shown that leadership from organizations have not contacted their employees hardly at all when they've been sitting at home during this time. What do you think? How do you think those employees are feeling about their leadership right now?
Not so much.
Yeah. They're not. They're at home and they're going through the motions. They're doing what they need to do, but I
Mm-hmm.
can almost guarantee you that they're looking for other opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there have also been cases where leaders are keeping in great contact with their people. They're reaching
Mm-hmm.
out and saying, "How are you doing? How are things going? How's your family doing? How are you guys feeling? How are you coping through this? What can we do to help?" And a plethora of other things that they're doing to help their employees know, "Hey, we're here. We've got your back for you. We care about you." And when they do that, what they're doing is they're increasing loyalty. As soon as their employees know that they care,
Mm-hmm.
their productivity goes up. And when their productivity goes up, their productivity, their confidence, their creativity, their innovation, all those things go up. And then they take better care of their customers.
Right.
And when their customers are well taken care of, those customers take a good care of your organization,
Mm-hmm.
because they keep coming back to you for return business. They come back to you with additional opportunities and things like that. So I'm working with organizations to do those assessments to see, okay, how are we leading with kindness? How well are we doing that? I'm assuming coming in that every organization is doing some things
Right.
that involve kindness. They're striving to establish trust relationships. They're striving to hear their employees, at least at some level. So come in and
Mm-hmm.
conduct the assessment, help them understand where they're doing well, and then identify those areas where there's opportunity for improvement. Then I can work with them to do a customized plan to address those areas that where they, need to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And that way they can tap into what I call the positive. You can, tap into Peacock,
Yeah.
because once you get that, your employees feel like they're heard, and you get that cycle started, you feel you've got a strong culture established. Everything else, plays off that.
Right.
Again, they take care of your customers take care of you, and for a relatively low cost, you can tap into what's almost can become a continuous high return cycle.
Right.
And you don't have another thing that drove me in this direction, it drove me crazy working for consulting firms where all I heard was, how many hours have you got? What's your billable time? Do you have billable time now? How many hours are you going to get this week? What's your billable hours for the next 3 months?
Yeah.
And always harping on the billable hours and not talking about, okay, how are we going to work with our customers? How are we doing here? How are
Mm-hmm.
we taking care of them, et cetera? So,
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, well, I know that's always the same issue with doesn't matter if we're promoting kindness or not. That is always the same issue when you're trying to develop a culture that's healthy and happy, kind of thing in the workplace. So do you have any success stories? Just I know you just kind of decided you like to do this. So have you ever any successful stories already that you've worked with people in this regard or not?
I wish I did, but
Okay.
well, to tell you the truth, I do have some success stories in the sense that, I have my own podcast. We've got a podcast called The Kindness and Happiness Connection with my good friend and wonderful colleague, Dr. Ilya Gorgoris.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also had what we call Kindness and Happiness Hour webinars, and basically just allowing people to come in and discuss. We've put some discussion points out there, but talk
Yeah.
about, how are you doing? How are you dealing with the current situation?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things are mechanisms are you using to cope? How are you navigating through
Right.
these waters? And we've had people reach out to us afterwards saying, hey, I really needed to hear those things. I
Right.
needed to have this discussion today. Please, continue to do these things. Thank you for taking the time and effort to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it had people respond to some of our podcast interviews and say, thank you.
Right.
One of the great things that I've had the privilege of working with Dr. Gargoris and his wonderful partner in writing a book called the 7 Keys for Navigating a Crisis. And Ilya Gorgoris and Konopostolopoulos wrote that wonderful book to help people navigate not only through this crisis, but through, future crises. And
Right.
they shared 7 timely keys to be able to help people. And I was able to help them format it, get it ready, and contribute to part of the final chapter and get it in place so that they could get it out and get it published on time. And I'm not going to take any credit for the writing and stuff, but I feel blessed to be able to have been a part of that success
Right.
story in bringing that message to
Mm-hmm.
people all across the world, and they're taking it and run with it. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like when we first start out, whether we're first starting out or we've had past experiences that we've had success stories, and so like you were saying, you've been able to be a part of other projects to bring some fruition, some better results, and how other people are using them. So that's really kind of cool. So, what types of people do you like to work with?
Well, I like to work with individuals. I like working with executive leadership because they're the decision makers. I like working with, but I'm also happy to work with individual groups throughout the organization, wherever they uh, need the guidance and direction, depending on what the results are of the assessment I do. I
Mm-hmm.
like to work with people who want to make change, who are
Mm-hmm.
willing to, who are open-minded. And, I may not be giving myself enough credit either, in the risk assessment world and the risk management and the cybersecurity world. I've worked directly with leadership. I've worked with them through, I walked through, I don't know how many dozens and dozens of direct um, discussions with CEOs, with CFOs, with not CFOs, COOs or CIOs,
Mm-hmm.
depending on where I was working, and helping them understand, these are the risks that you're facing. These are the areas where you're doing well. These are the areas where there's opportunity for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking that skill set. I've been able to talk to them about cybersecurity, and actually been able to talk to them now about their organization's economic security, really.
Right.
Because if you're taking care, again, you're ensuring your economic stability and economic longevity and your organizational viability when you take the time to assess and establish an organization where there's a culture that's led with warmth, where kindness is top of mind,
Mm-hmm.
etc. So I like to work with those people directly, because they're the ones who are there to set an example and to
Mm-hmm.
set the course for the ship, if you will. They're the captains of their organizations. So
Right. Right.
those are the people I work with.
Okay. Okay. And so do you have any couple of tips or something you want to share with our audience about what they can do to get started now?
There's something that every one of us can do to have kindness top of mind every day.
Mm-hmm.
And before I say that, though, I want to remind people why I talk about kindness so much when it comes to business. Every one of us knows that success relies directly, the key to success in business is trustworthy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have trustworthy relationship with you, if you don't feel like you can trust me and I don't feel like I can trust you, we're not going to work together, right? It's
Right.
just, it's going to be very hard. And what's the key ingredient for trustworthy relationships? What's the keystone of that? Keystone of that is connection.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to connect to people's hearts and minds emotionally, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, however you do it. You have to be able to connect to that center.
Right.
Because if you don't, again, if people know you and they don't like you and they don't trust you, that if that connection's not there, they're not
Mm-hmm.
going to keep coming back. And
Right.
so that connection, what's the key ingredient to connecting to people? It's kindness.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so in other words, I will come back and say kindness is the cement
Right.
upon which trustworthy relationships are built. And coming around again, trustworthy relationships are the cement of success. So kindness breeds success in organizations. So four things for people to keep in mind. For keep people to bring kindness to the top of their mind in the business workplace. Every day, look for, or get up and determine every day in your organization, have it right there. Today is a day where we will look through the lens of kindness.
Mm-hmm.
We will look at, through our meetings, through the discussions we have, both internally and externally, we're going to look at things through the lens of kindness. How can we make this, a what's in it for we, win-win situation?
Mm-hmm.
Think about who you're going to be with, what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be, and plan out those opportunities. Plan them out, and I'm going to say potential opportunities, because you never know.
Right.
We plan things out. We never know how our day's going to go.
Right.
We're doing this podcast, and if I called you 5 minutes ahead of time, said, "Hey, my daughter just broke her leg," and I'd take her to the hospital, we wouldn't be talking. We never know ahead.
Right.
The next thing, besides the potential opportunity you've planned out, look for and act on other opportunities, any opportunities to show kindness that
Mm-hmm.
come to mind, or that come into your view. Look for those as you go throughout the day.
Mm-hmm.
And act. Look for those opportunities and act on them. Act on anything that's reasonable. Say hi to your colleagues. Say hi to your coworkers. Ask them how they're doing, and really
Right.
ask. So you're doing okay. Be aware. Give a kind word. Say, "Hey, you've done great, Mari-Lyn. This has been awesome, Mari-Lyn. I like your shirt today. You look very nice. Love those earrings." All those different. You can,
Yeah.
simple things. They don't have to be grandiose.
Yeah.
you know, leaving a card on somebody's desk and say, "Hey, I really appreciate the work you did on that presentation the other day. I wouldn't have been able to to give it or do it like I did without your help. Those little things matter.
Right.
And then invite and encourage. The final step is invite and encourage other people to do the same thing. Have that as your mantra. We're gonna look for and act on and do kindness. We are a kindness-oriented organization. This is our cause. This is our purpose. This is where you fit into that cause, and this is how we're making the world a better place. This is why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we're a team, and this is why we're going to be successful.
Right.
And remind people and make sure that they're well aware of that. So those 4 tips. That's the foundation for my Kindness Givers Formula, the book that I wrote.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you.
45-minute read.
Yeah.
That's the foundation for that, and that's the foundation for a business, for an organization to start establishing a solid kindness culture.
Okay, cool. Cool. Yeah, I was just going to ask you about your book. Glad you brought it up.
I'm stealing your thunder, Mari-Lyn. Sorry about that.
It's all right. I have my own little quote about, you said cement of kindness. I might know kindness is the glue that sticks us together. So
it is.
But anyway, yeah, so I'd like you to maybe just tell the folks how they can get a hold of you. So if they decide what they heard, they want to reach out to you.
Yeah, they can reach out to me via randymcneely.com, www.randy, R-E-N-D-Y, McNeely, M-C-N-E-E-L-Y.com. And there's a contact page there. They can get a hold of me directly there, or they can reach out to me via LinkedIn, send me a direct message, connect with me there. And those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Okay, great. And then plus, Randy will have a page on my podcast page, and you can reach out to him there and learn a little bit more about him. And also, you can also hear his call on Anchor, and we're on Anchor and iTunes as well. So you can watch him or listen to him. It's your choice. So anyway, thank you, Randy, so much for being on the call with me today. I so appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man, and I wish you all the best and success, and we'll be chatting with you soon.
Thank you, Mari-Lyn. You're awesome. You're wonderful and kind, and I very much appreciate you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Hey, you're welcome. I'm glad you could make it. So we'll take care, and we'll say goodbye for now. Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye-bye.